Today we are diving into Cursor AI, a code editor with built-in AI capabilities. Let's directly jump into that. I'll show you how to use this AI tool so that you can get the best out of this IDE. Okay, so first of all, go to cursor.com and download the software. It is very straightforward to download and install. I have installed the IDE on my computer and signed in, started the trial, and it looked like this. So if you have VS Code already installed, you can import the extensions to Cursor AI. In that way, it will be very easy for you to configure for your development. Since I'll be using to write Java Spring application, I have added a extension pack which is for Java Spring development. So let's just create a new project and see how we can get the best out of this IDE. So for Java development, the extension you will have to install is Spring Boot extension pack. Okay, this will have all the required extension for Spring Boot development in Cursor AI, provided that you have already installed Java. Let's directly now jump into coding. So for that, let's create a new Spring Boot project. So to create a new Spring Boot project, we can create a new project here by clicking on this and create a Java project. From here, I can step by step create a Spring Boot project, but there is an alternative which is going to start.spring.io. Here I can also do the same thing, but the UI is better here, and it will provide me a zip file which I'll have to extract and open on Cursor AI. Okay, for this tutorial, I'm creating a new project which is in Java. The build tool is Maven. The version of Spring is 3.3.4, the stable one, and I have provided some name for project. Here the group ID is task tracker. This is an example project for this tutorial. Put an artifact, name, packaging name. The packaging will be jar, and the version of Java is 21. So now let's add some dependency. Since we are using to build a web app, first of all let's add Spring Web. Then let's add Postgres connector, since I'll be using Postgres to write some API with Java. So for that, PostgreSQL driver, let's then add JPA, which comes with Hibernate, and these three are ready to go tool. If I need anything else later, I can add to my pom.xml file since it is a Maven project. Okay, so now let's generate the project and download it. So once the project is downloaded, I'm going to the repository and extracting it. The same thing could be done with Cursor AI. I'm just doing it on start.spring.io as it more convenient. So I'm deleting this one. This one is the repository. Now let's go to Cursor AI once again. Repository folder. This is the folder we want to open. So this is the Spring Boot project. So let's open this folder, and for the first time, it will take some time to index all the thing and to download the dependencies. So it is currently syncing. So let's wait for a while for it to complete. So now the syncing is done, and this is my project, which is task tracker, an example project. Here inside the source, I have main, Java, and test Java application. This is the starting point of my application. So I can run my app from here. So if I click on run, it shouldn't start because I have added Spring Data JPA, but I did not provide any database configuration. So for that, I have to go to my resource folder, and inside the application properties, I have to add some properties for database connectivity. So here, let's just start to utilize Cursor AI here. Let's generate. Okay, I have asked to add some database connectivity properties for Spring Data JPA with sample value so that I can edit. So it generated this. It is considering MySQL. I have to follow up instruction that my database is PostgreSQL. So I provided the thing, and now let's see how it looks. Everything looks okay. And here, let's accept this one for now and review. So my database is hosted in my local machine. So up to this part, it is fine. I just have to change the database name. So for my database, it is name of the database is task_management. So let's update it. for now. Let's run our application once again and see what happens. And as you can see, our task tracker application is starting. So our application is up and running. Let's now learn how to get the best out of Cursor AI. So first and most important thing is creating a file called Cursor rules. You can also do the same from here, from the settings. If I go to Cursor setting, I can see that rules for AI. This is the most important and powerful thing for Cursor AI, because the instruction you set here will be followed in every single character of code it generates. Okay, so here I can paste the instruction directly. Like, let's say I want to say that before ending every function, print something into console. If I write this one here for cursor rules, every function cursor AI generate, it will put some system.out.println at the end of the method. Okay, this is that powerful. So what you can do is you can create a new file called cursor rules file, and that will do the same. So in the root of the project, I'll create a new file called .cursor rules, and what to put in this file. So luckily we have a website called cursor to directory, which provide all the instruction for working with cursor. You will understand it once we visit the website, that is cursor.directory. Okay, so in this website, for all the available technology, there's some predefined guideline, the code practices, the best practices. Since we are using Spring Boot, we'll search for Spring. If you are using React, then use that one. So this is the full instruction for Cursor AI to follow the standard. One important thing is this can vary from project to project, so I highly recommend to carefully check this and update, and also add your custom instruction for Cursor AI. Okay, so pasting all the thing here. For me, the project I work usually have some constraint, had some practices, had some convenience which are strictly followed. So for that, I would add those at the end of the file. So our cursor rule is done. Now the next important thing is understanding the scope of this tool. So Cursor AI is helping you to complete code, debug, or find issue in your code, also to generate some implementation. But that is not full software engineering. From requirement analysis to feasibility study, and importantly the design of your system, that has to be done by yourself. You can take help from chat here. If I just type Ctrl L, then a chat window will appear, and I'll go into that. But you can also chat, take some idea. But before diving into coding, you have to understand your requirement clearly and design your project, design the system. So that includes also the structure of your architecture, because if you just start writing code and once in a while you will discover that you have prepared a mess with this AI tool. So first of all, you have to have a good plan and execute the plan with the help of Cursor AI. So now let's talk about the application we are here to develop. So I put the name for this example app is task tracker. So what will it do? So for me, for this tutorial, the scope of this application is to implement some API, some crude operation of task, like create a new task and get all the tasks created, update the status of a task, and also delete a task. A crude operation basically. So for that, we have to design our database for the first, design our database. So what can I do to design our database? So let's consider our application will have a few information like the name of the task, task detail, the due date, and the status, like if it is completed or not, and creation time and update time. So we can create a new table in our database, in our Postgres database, to which our application is now connected. And here is a table which I have already prepared for this application. So here, since I'm using Postgres, the primary key is ID and it is of type serial. It is having a title, description, due date, status, which name is completed. It is a boolean default value is false, and created and updated. So this table already exists in our database. So our database design is done. Let's now design our project. So for this simple application, we don't need to do the full system design or consider other technologies and constraint. We can directly jump into coding. We only need to structure our project, because currently it is a very small project, but over and over when we'll be adding new feature, we have to have a good structure so that everything is organized. For that, we are creating few packages in our application. The first package I want to create under my task tracker is entity. The second package I want to create is DTO, later service, later controller, and let's have a database layer called DTO, or also we can put it as repository, more understandable for Spring. So our basic organization of project is done. This is called layer architecture, convenient for small application. Okay, so since our database is ready, let's create an entity called task. Okay, so create a Java class called task. So this will be a Spring JPA entity. So let's clear this class and instruct cursor to complete the code, right? Because that is what we are trying to learn here. So let's start cursoring. Let's instruct cursor to generate the JPA entity for the following SQL, following DDL of PostgreSQL, and let's just provide the DDL of the table. Okay, let's see what it does. So I'm putting it and clicking on generate. So it have creating an entity. Generation type is identity, type is long. See, what is the title? Title is not null. Yeah, the level is false. Okay, everything looks okay. Let's integrate it and see if shows any error. There is no error here, as you can see. Let's clear it. So it successfully created the entity. Here the ID identifies that it is a primary key, and generation type identity means the database will take the responsibility of incrementing the value and regenerating it. Okay, so if you need any clarification from code, you can also right click and click on chat and ask for explain the code. Okay, so here, as you can see, the ID annotation is for primary key. The generation type identity indicates that primary key should be generated by the database using auto increment column. Okay, so it is for totally database responsibility. So now you know what is going on. So that is the advantage and convenience of Cursor IDE. Okay, now our database creation and entity creation is done. Let's just create a repository for this. So let's copy this name task and insert the repository, create a new file. It will be an interface. Actually, the name of the interface is task repository. So it will be JPA repository. So I'll implement it with cursor. So let's just delete the interface and instruct cursor to implement a JPA repository for tasks entity. Yeah, it is doing great so far. I asked to generate a repository and it generated the repository. Here inside the repository, the type is long, which is the primary key, the type of primary key. So up to now the repository generation is fine. Even though this annotation is optional, let's just keep it that way. So I have also implemented the repository. Now let's go to service, create a service, but for now we don't know what to implement in our service. So let's go to controller and start implementing our API. So I'm going to controller and creating a new Java class called task controller, and let's instruct cursor to generate few method. Okay, so here it has to be in details because a method in controller will have some request DTO or even HTTP servlet request or something else as an additional parameter. So here I have to put some details, what method I want and what will be the functionality of the method. So for me, let's first create a controller which will create a new task. So it will be a post request. Create a method that handles the post request of creating a task. Okay, let's see how it generates. Let's check. Yeah, everything is looking great. So here, this is the post mapping it have provided. Here is a request body called task, directly the entity. So we do not want to have entity in our request body. That is not a good practice. Okay, so it is ASCII. It is actually returning a response entity instead of DTO, and everything is fine. But in terms of request DTO, I didn't like it. So let's follow instruction and ask him to the method will have a DTO task creation DTO. Okay, so now it's better. And do we want to return response entity? Yeah, we can return response entity, that is fine, but we can also return a custom DTO. For now, let's keep the response entity so that we have full control over our response. Okay, so let's see what it generates. It have created a task creation DTO, and now we can accept this and we can modify our code add as needed. So let's accept this one, and since this DTO is not present, we have to create a new DTO for task creation. So currently we have a package called DTO. Going to this and create a new Java file called task creation DTO, and let's complete the DTO with cursor. Create a DTO called for creating a new task. This application is so far very simple, so I think simple instruction will work, but when the application get bigger and bigger, you have to provide more details, more context, as much as you can, so that it can generate correctly, even though every time you have to review your code and update accordingly, but the more context you provide, the better. Okay, this is great. It is giving me, let's accept this one, but it is interesting because I did not have added the validation dependency, but it is recommending this. So in order to use add not blank and the size annotation future or present, since we are planning the task for future, which is great. So everything is great, but I have to add a dependency in my pom.xml file. Okay, so let's go to pom.xml, and inside the dependency tag, let's add what is the dependency name again? Add Jakarta validation dependency for Spring Boot to have validation in request and response DTO. So I do not know the dependency, but I instructed it. Let's see if it works. So since I have changed something in the pom.xml, the extension of Spring asking me to refresh and re-download any dependency, I'm clicking on always. So now if I go to the task creation DTO, no error whatsoever. So the correct dependency is added, even though I didn't No, I vaguely instructed. And this is a DTO, and it is having empty constructor, all args constructor, getter and setter. Yeah, so far everything is okay, and I can get rid of the all arg constructor if I want, but it is good to have. So the important thing is the number of property I need and number of properties it have, or if it have some extra. So it have title, description and due date. And let's go the task controller, and as we can see it have title, description and due date. And after new task is created, it saves with the repository call and return the saved task with the status code of 201 created. So everything is looking fine, but here is an error. Okay, so what it is saying? So currently in the updated version of Spring, if you use constructor based injection, which is this kind of dependency injection which is required, which is a good pattern dependency injection and inversion of control. If you don't know about this, I have a tutorial on this, check out on my channel. It is very important and basic thing for Spring Boot. So in the later version of Spring, this annotation is optional, it is not triggered anymore, so I'm removing this and the error is gone. So this is a constructor based injection, and whenever this controller is being created, it will ask that this dependency is required to create an instance of me, so provide me this. So the full process is being automatic by inversion of control. So it is asking the dependency it need when the application is started. Okay, now the post mapping looks fine. One thing is missing, which is the URL. So I have to provide a path. So once I put a bracket, it suggested a text called create, and I pressed tab and it is completed, which is fine. So far everything is looking fine. One thing I personally didn't like is directly injecting repository inside my controller. What I would do is I would create a service and put the repository inside this service. So for now, for this tutorial, let's keep it that way and run our application. To see if everything is working or not. Port 8080 is already in use. That means our application is already running. So let's run once again. Now the application is started, and we should test the API if it is working correctly or not. I do not have Postman installed, so let's create another API, get API, which I can easily test from my browser. Post API cannot be tested with browser, because every time I type an address on my browser, it sends a GET request to the server. So let's create a GET request to get all the tasks so that I can test it on browser. I'm going to task controller, and here putting the cursor in new line, typing Ctrl and K, and instructing to add a new method which will return all the tasks. The end point will be /tasks, and it will return a JSON response. Okay, let's see what it generates. So the GET mapping is created and it is returning a response entity of tasks. Okay, it looks good. Let's accept it. Currently it is giving an error. It shouldn't be a big issue with list. Import the list java util list. So now the GET mapping is done. So let's see if we have any data inserted in our task table. So currently there is no data inserted. So let's go to Cursor AI, and I can add the entity and ask me and ask it to give me some dummy data to insert. So I'm asking it to give me few insert query to populate dummy data in the task table so that we can have some result. Okay, so let's see what it provides. It is just providing few insert query, but the example is pretty much same: task 1, task 2, task 3, etc. So copying this code and going to my database and going to SQL script and pasting this query and trying to execute it. Let's see what happens. Yes, the insertion is now done. So if I refresh the table and refresh here, I can see that a few example row is inserted. So now if I run our application and put a GET request in the browser, I should have get some data if everything is working correctly. So let's restart our application and see if the application is running correctly. Yeah, the application is correctly running and our endpoint is localhost/task and there is no authorization whatsoever. So localhost:8080/API/tasks. Yeah, cool. We are getting the data as JSON as we have inserted. So I hope the insert query also should work, because in this little code everything is looking fine. But I'm sorry about that. I do not have Postman installed on this machine. And this is how you can use Cursor AI. So in this example, the key takeaway is using a good tailored cursor rule file and understanding the full code base by selecting the code and clicking on chat. It can also explain code. The most beneficial thing from Cursor AI is it can recommend and suggest your code based on your existing implementation. So now let's go to the chat part, for which the shortcut is Ctrl+L, and here we can add different type of context. So one example is adding a file. Like if I select a file and ask specific question, then it will consider the file to reply. And another thing is, in my chat I can also refer the code base, and I can refer a specific folder, I can refer a documentation. So if you are working with a very private SDK or utility, you can refer the documentation to Cursor and ask a question. And also we can mention code base. Full code base is now in the context, and I can just ask the specific functionality of code base, like do my app have any API to delete tasks? It can be anything. You can just easily understand your full code base, okay, with this AI. So you don't need to go line by line. It will give you the response in clear English. So the provided code snippet does not include API endpoint for deleting task. The task controller class in the code base has endpoint for creation and retrieving. Okay. Yeah. So you can get a lot of help from this stat part for understanding code and debug things. So even if there are some errors in your code, you can directly just ask. There will be a suggestion. Let's say I deleted this and there is an error, and it is automatically suggesting E, right? I have never seen any IDE to suggest this kind of thing. So there is error. Now I can fix in AI chat due to the typo in the class name, right? So there are lots of cases for developer when they are stuck into silly error. This kind of thing will occur less with this tool. And these are the key thing while working with Cursor. So far I have showed how to develop with Java Spring, So if you need to develop in React, you can also apply those instructions which I have just shared for your React development. And sometimes even this tool can produce errorless code, bad code, right? So code review is very important. Even if you develop with AI, even if you do not write any code, you have to carefully check your code, because with AI there is a high chance of creating buggy code. So AI is making our life easier. We should still be careful and write proper test. It is now easier than ever to do test-driven development and write additional cases of test with AI. So we should always consider testing and also reviewing our code. So that's all for this first tutorial on Cursor AI. If you are helped with this tutorial, if you have learned something out of it, I request you to like the video so that YouTube knows it is a good content. That way it helps me and motivate me to make more helpful content. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next tutorial.